You want me to do like a test shot?
Let's do it, let's run it.
Who taught you how to be a gentleman, and what's the best advice you've received about being a gentleman?
I grew up in a culture of being a gentleman. I mean, I was raised in the Deep South. It was always open doors. Yes, ma'am. No, ma'am. Yes, sir. No, sir. When people come up to the table, stand up, do your best to help people, those types of situations. So it was just ingrained in me. It's what our culture was. It's 2024 now, things are different. I know a lot of young men are worried about being a gentleman to a woman because they're scared of getting rejected or being embarrassed because they try to do something kind and maybe the woman said they're a creep. The way I look at being chivalrous or being a gentleman in general, particularly in my day-to-day, is that, man, I get something out of opening a door for somebody. And I like to do it for people that it's very clear that I don't want anything from them. A lot of times it's those people that don't get treated as kindly as other people do. For that reason, they're that much more grateful. And I always say that giving and being kind to people is not only something that you do for other people, but it's also selfish because it makes you feel good about yourself. When it comes to being a gentleman, that's where I learned it, was growing up in the South. But when it comes to remaining a gentleman, I think it's important to look at it at the perspective of being a gentleman and being kind and chivalrous to other people who really do a lot for you. And that's why I think it's always a good idea.
What other bro code rules are not talked about? What are some that you have with your guys?
There's the obvious ones, like don't blatantly hit on somebody's girl. But I think one that's most often looked over is when you're around somebody else's girlfriend or there's a group of guys together with their wives, that you don't find yourself competing internally amongst the guys and trying to brag and try to stick your chest out the most. A lot of guys mess that up. They get in friend groups and all of a sudden they start competing within the group when really they should be waiting for that guy to go to the bathroom and then talking about how awesome he is to his wife and talk about like how you landed a good one, this is a really good man, that type of thing. Versus what happens in a lot of scenarios is there can be this infighting. And I think there's a huge difference in friend groups that are supportive versus the ones that have the infighting. If I'm gonna choose to be a part of a friend group, I'm definitely gonna be the one that's building each other up at all times. I think that's one thing that people really overlook is that piece, that inner dynamic between you and other couples.
What are some facts about women you learned, and how did you turn that into a positive thing for you?
I think something really important and something that sometimes gets missed. If you understand women, there's no reason to be ever really upset with them. If you really understand female nature and how that works and how the dynamic between men and women work, it doesn't have to be overly complicated. There's a lot of good women out there. If you just understand to speak woman, we sometimes misrepresent and make it seem as if there's not, but there really, really are. You can find one, you really can, but you need to understand them. It's like a supercar, man, they're powerful. They can hurt you. It's best you understand how they work before you go hop in the driver's seat and get to going too fast. You need to accept their nature, learn it, understand it. That way you don't find yourself frustrated with it, or worse, brokenhearted over it.
Besides heartbreak, what other emotions do you think are the core to building the ultimate character in men?
I like that he just assumed that heartbreak was there. I don't think he's wrong about heartbreak, but outside of heartbreak, the feeling of wanting to be something more and having that feeling crashing against the struggle of what every person's journey in life is. Like nobody just walks straight through and it's easy. So there's gonna be a struggle to failing and finding situations that you can fail in where the stakes are high, but there is a world to gain, I think, is the best route to go. So after heartbreak, I would say the struggle and the pain of failing would probably be first to heartbreak. Accepting that you're gonna fail and making sure that you frame it right inside the story of who you become is something you can get excited about and be proud of on your way to where you're going, I think is really important.
What advice would you give to a kid who struggles with getting up daily to endure the necessary pains of becoming a man?
Why does this kid's life sound like a medieval novel? I wake up before the dawn so I can go out to fight the struggles of manhood by forced pain. Well, there's a couple things I would say about that. So number one, you have to give your body time to adjust the circadian rhythm. The only way you're really gonna do that is to force your way through a couple of sleep cycles. It might take you a week, it might take you 2 weeks, but eventually your body will start waking up at that time. And then from there, I would just give you a little advice on how you framed it in your mind. Instead of calling it the struggles of being a young man, I would look at the opportunities of a young man that you have to wake up in the morning, go out there and do everything possible to become the best individual you possibly can. So one day you have enough to give to the people that you love. When you start looking at it that way, you'll see it more as a blessing than a curse, and you might just pop out of bed in the morning. Good luck, man.
How do you fix your mindset when your mind is attacking you so that you can continue to be the man you're meant to be?
That's the greatest gift you've ever been given, man. And probably should be your biggest fear would be losing it. I always say the voice that haunts you is the one that makes you great. I truly believe that, man. If that's a voice that you stand the chance to lose, then that might be one of the scariest things that ever happened to you. And the way that you lose it is to ignore it enough that it starts to fade away, that weaker voice inside of you starts to win too much, and then it's too hard to recover. Be glad you have it. A lot of people don't. It's a gift from God, man, I'm telling you. Feed it, listen to it, follow its lead, and I'm telling you, it'll be the greatest gift you realize you had that was ever inside of you. Listen to that voice. The voice that haunts you makes you great.
What does being human mean to you?
Well, I think it means you're inherently flawed, which means that you should definitely have room to be graceful with people, including yourself. I think there's a lot of people that can be graceful with other people in their situations as long as it didn't hurt them more than they can their own self. I find that if you are constantly holding that weight, it's so much to bear when you're sitting in the guilt of things that you think you should be doing, rather than pushing that shit aside, forgiving yourself and starting over and working towards the goal and catching that momentum without that weight. So being human starts with understanding that you're going to be flawed. Myself included, we're all going to do things that either we wish we didn't do, or we're not going to be able to get things done at the speed we think we should get them done, or all these different things that are going to happen. But what's most important is you keep pushing forward, understand that you're flawed, and I think most importantly is that you have grace with other people and yourself. If you can do that, you'd be pretty human to me.
Are you vague on purpose with certain topics like be the man? If so, where can we find specific answers?
There's a lot to that phrase in a sense. First thing I'll say is that I never like to tell somebody what it'll take for them to be a man, because they can only answer that question. I can share with you what kind of man I want to be, give you advice on the things that I've experienced and the reasons I might have landed on the places that I did in regards to what being a man means to me. But I don't think that any person should ever be able to tell somebody else what makes a true man, or a woman for that matter, or an individual. I have some things that I lean very hard towards in regards to my rights and the rights of protecting my children from things I don't want them to see. But other than that, do what the fuck you want. Regardless of whether you agree or disagree with me, I'll never say that you're not a man. I think only the individual. And truly, what I would call a man I would want to be is the kind of man that can make that decision for myself and not lay it on the shoulders of other people's judgment. There's nothing any of you guys can't do. All of you are already the man in some way or another, and you're just building on top of that and keep pushing forward. You're the man.
What was it like leaving home for the first time? Do you have any advice for those doing it for financial reasons?
Leaving home for the first time for me was very exciting. I felt like I was going on an adventure. I've always been that way. I've always been a person that could travel. I've always been a person that could spend time alone. I wasn't sad or feeling lonely about it at all. I looked at it as this great opportunity that was in front of me. In regards to moving somewhere else for financial reasons, sometimes you just gotta go, man. I tell people all the time, they're like, why Miami? I said, because it is the city that has the greatest opportunity in the world right now. If it would have been a couple 100 years ago, maybe I'd be on a horse riding across the country chasing gold. I believe in opportunity. That's what makes America so great. And so sometimes you have to leave your hometown to put yourself in an atmosphere that can provide an opportunity for the lifestyle that you want. And the first step is stepping out and finding that atmosphere in that place that fits you and the goals that you have for yourself in your life. It might not be the easiest thing for you to leave home, might not be as easy as it was for me, but understand that if you're going to the right place for the right reason, it could be one of the best decisions you ever made. It was for me. I hope that answers your question.
How did you overcome the bad times and keep building your business during dark moments?
Quitting was never an option, and I think that helps you a lot, because when you're pinned in a room and there's only one way out, there's only one way that you can focus your energy and attention. For me, although it took me a little bit longer than I thought it would, one thing that I truly did correct, if I didn't do anything correct, was I picked something and I stuck to it long enough to see it be successful. And I went through a lot of pain to get it to be successful. I'm really proud of the younger version of me that did that, because I think it was the right decision. I think if I would have hopped around a lot, I would have just took the beginner punches from each of those industries. Instead of that, I stuck to it long enough to see it bear fruit. That changed my entire life. It gave me the opportunity to set myself up to do the things I'm even doing now, because I built something that was very sustainable.
Does being a business owner make you a slave to money like a 9-to-5 does, but with luxuries? What does freedom mean to you?
Yeah, man, that's actually a really good question. So I think there's phases. The first first phase is like, holy shit, how do I make payroll? And how do I get enough business to keep the doors open? How do I go from doing it at this size to doing it to the next size? They call it the toddler phase. I think Tony Robbins does a chart on this where he goes from infant to toddler to teenager to prime. So there's all these levels of a career, but also a business, like a life cycle of a business. And so in that infancy phase, it's like you're still having to worry about swiping your debit card. And then you get to the point where you get big enough where you start making pretty decent money and you don't any longer have to look exactly at what you're swiping and wonder if you can cover a dinner or not. I think that's one of the best times in the business just because it takes a lot of weight off of you, a lot of pressure off of you. It leads to, if you have the right systems and the right business setup and the right people in place, the opportunity to travel. Now, I'll say at that level of freedom, you can't be traveling all the time, but you have substantially more vacations, more places you can go, you can get away more, you can upgrade to first class, you can stay at the nicest places, you can afford dinner, not look at the tab and really be worried about much. But you still have to go back to the business, and if you're not around a substantial amount of time, it doesn't work. And then there's a level where you either make substantially more money and you can hire somebody to do that. This is how I did it. I made enough money where I could really put some really good people in place and work on the business with them full time as they're in management roles with bonus structures and things like that. It got to the point where I'm very free from that business. That business is not even in the same state as I am, but I get the reports every day and I speak to the COO every day. And so what I do think is really important, and I think people miss this when they're starting a business, they can get to that point where they're just big enough to make enough money that they start to jump out of that business and they do it too early because they want the freedom too much. If you stick in there and you make solid systems and you put really solid people in there that are incentivized to do a good job financially, then you stand a better chance of having that freedom later. I would just say don't make the mistake of jumping out of the business too soon before you know it's truly time, before you can really pressure test it to see if it'll run without you. Because I think it's worth sticking it out and building something sustainable, because the freedom on the backside of being able to have it run without you is just so much more worth it. Those are the stages for me. Hope that helps.
As someone who has become wealthy, do you catch yourself feeling superior to others? If so, what's your take on elites of the world?
No, man, not at all. If anything, man, you make some money and then you realize, how many other people have done it when you go to step into that next level. You step into the new room, but you step in at the bottom in some ways. So no, man, and to be honest with you, money doesn't make you a good person at all. You're not better than anybody. In fact, I think it really exposes when people are assholes. Money really just amplifies. It's like alcohol. Either you're a nice drunk or you're an asshole. It's pretty easy to see when somebody does think they're better than somebody else, but no, man, obviously not. That's crazy.
What gets you excited at this point in your life?
Man, all kinds of things. Hitting new goals in the businesses, hitting new levels of podcasts we're doing, seeing people that are working with me make money. I love seeing my friends win. It's one of my favorite things to do, man. I get to do it all the time. I go to dinner with some uber successful guy and I just get to sit there and listen to somebody that I actually care about seeing and spending time around talk about how well they're doing in almost every category of their life. And I enjoy that. And I think the reason I enjoy it so much is because oftentimes when you're winning the way these guys are winning, there's very few people in your life that can truly be happy for you. And I just like to be a person that really can be genuinely happy to see them win. I enjoy it. I truly do. I like to find something that's actually valuable and give it to them. And I am actually happy to see them winning. So it's not hard for me to do it, but I think it's probably rare in their life. So that's probably one of my favorite things to give.
Out of all the students you've worked with, what's the greatest success story you've heard?
The other night, me and Keaton and Brad Lee were in Nashville, and there's a guy on stage playing guitar. It was at Morgan Wallen's bar. So walking to Morgan Wallen, and the singer sees me, Brad, and Keaton. Before the next song came on, he stopped the band and he called us over there and he told us that he'd been watching our content for a long time, particularly the real estate stuff. And he said, because of y'all and the content that I've watched and the things I've learned, I've been able to invest in enough real estate where I do this full time, playing music up and down Broadway. He was in Morgan Wallen's bar when he stopped us. He's got 4 little girls. He says he supports his whole family off the real estate and he plays music, which is dope because you can tell that's what he loves to do. That was one of the more recent things I've heard from somebody that's either watched the content or been in a group. It meant a lot to hear.
What would your advice be to first-time dads who grew up without a masculine figure and wanted to raise masculine kids?
I think that depends whether you have girls or boys. That'll change it a little bit. What you want to start with is your character. Making sure that you're putting the values that you want them to press out into the world, the ones that represent you. Then I personally take a hard look at education, how I want my children to come about knowing the world, how it actually works, how it moves, what's important to learn versus what's not, when it's important to learn it, when they're going to actually care enough about it to listen and want to take it in versus it getting shoved down their throat in order that doesn't make sense to me. But in regards to masculinity, if it's a boy, then all you have to do is be that strong figure. You know, they watch how you interact with their mom. They see whether you have a masculine or a feminine frame in your interactions with just her. They see how you handle situations. They see when you get emotional. They see when you don't, and they pick up on those things. So I think it first just starts with looking at yourself and recognizing what qualities you want to have when it comes to giving that example to them in person and having them feel that masculine energy around them, making them feel safe, protected, that you're not only physically in control, but emotionally in control. That would be a great starting place, along with how you choose to educate them and the interactions they see between you and their mother.
Would you consider making your own country song or writing your own book?
Yeah, I'd consider both. In fact, when I was a little boy, that was the first thing I ever wanted to do. It was either that or become like a ninja. But somewhere in there, I decided I wanted to be a 90s country music star. I did pick up the guitar and learn how to use it. Learned a bunch of songs. It's not that hard after you get GCD and a couple other chords after that. I can tell you, if I had more time, I'd make more time to play guitar and play music. When I was a little boy, I definitely remember wanting to be a country music singer at some point. So maybe it would be that.
What are the top 2 things you hate doing, and are they tasks you're willing to hand off?
I hate signing Christmas cards for my company. It's not because I don't love the people we're sending them to. It's just a box of Christmas cards and I gotta stop everything I'm doing and I can't delegate it and I have to sign all these Christmas cards. And every year Renee's like, your box of cards, and it's always like this month-long thing because she's trying to get me to do it because she's scared I'm gonna wait till the last minute and not do it. And I just hate signing Christmas cards because it takes forever and it's just boring as fuck, so. That's one thing. And no, I can't delegate it. The second thing, there was a time where I had to handle a lot of payroll in my construction company. It was a nightmare. The guys in the time sheets and they forget stuff or they turn in tickets late. My check's wrong by an hour. Will you meet me in a parking lot at Walmart at 10 o'clock tonight for whatever amount of money, my 20 bucks. So I haven't done payroll in over a decade, but it was one of the first things that I realized quickly that I wanted to hire and get done for me because it's a nightmare. So payroll and Christmas cards.